Hello, my name is Dan Smiley. I'm a business analyst at Serverlec and I'm going to be talking about flow in this presentation. As you can see in front of you, we have a tracking screen of patients that are on ward, on leave and failed to return, and we're showing Rio Ward 2 as our ward. At the top of the right hand corner you can see the user Wayne Gill logged in to the instance of Rio, which in this case is called Rio. The menu button at the top left hand corner will navigate to any of the trackers, which are typically wards that have been configured here, and as I select on the touch screen different ward, the tracking screen changes to patients that are on that particular ward, on leave on that from that ward and failed to return. I'm just going to return to Rio Ward 2 so that you can clearly see the bed cards, but these bed cards can zoom in and out using pinch and stretch gestures to zoom right in, zoom out, or use the plus and minus keys at the top here to zoom in and out, so that you can clearly see the patients that we're working on. I'm going to leave it in to that zoom control. So firstly we'll look at the patients that are on the ward. These four patients here have some indicators, some service requested triangles that you can see there. You can see which consultant they're under, and we can see down at the bottom here this Phil Nails has a planned leave, and we can see the date as 1st of July when their leave is planned. We can also see a news score just above that. Conversely, Albert Burley in this second column here is due back in 1 day, 18 hours and 45 minutes and of a type of home leave. And in failed to return, we can see a patient that has been marked at AWOL and how long they have been AWOL, and a patient that has overdue leave. So this fully integrates with the leave and AWOL and absent functions within Rio, but you are also able to send the patient on leave, return them from leave, and send on AWOL and return from AWOL from this flow screen. So we're going to look at some of these patient bed cards in a little bit more detail. One of the things you'll notice is the discharge circles within the top right hand corner of each of the bed cards. These can be configured by the sites themselves, but are typically a red, amber and green type of status, indicating their discharge readiness. But also within the circle you can see where an intended discharge date has been applied. So if no intended discharge date has been applied, you have a question mark. Otherwise, if a date is in the future, you'll have a minus figure counting down to those to the intended discharge date. So for example, -6 is saying that that patient's intended discharge is 6 days away. 0 is today, and a plus 2 days would be suggesting that the discharge date, intended discharge date, is now in the past and it's 2 days over. So I'm going to click on Janice O'Rourke and open the bed card up, and the information, a lot of the information we've just seen on the bed card here is reiterated, but in addition to seeing what was on the bed card, we can also see a textual explanation of everything. On the right hand side of the screen you'll notice that there is a timeline which can be in date order or reverse date order, and we can also see a number of tabs along each of these areas, which we're going to look at in more detail. The patient synopsis, right at the top of that, we have the patient details, which we can expand, and we can see any alerts and allergies using the Rio alerts and allergy indicators, as well as details of the GP, the next of kin, and the patient's details, such as contact numbers for each of those areas. Just below the patient header, we can see where the patient is currently, whether they're on leave or not, the consultant that they're under. If a nurse has been set, that will also show. It will also show on the bed card as a little icon with the nurse's initials. The discharge status we've just been talking about, the admission date, a discharge ready date and intended discharge date. Both of those can be set within the discharge tab of this synopsis. So you can see here that I can select a discharge status, and if I save that, we'll see it go into this table below, as well as on the patient flow timeline to the right. I can also set the intended discharge date and change that to a different date, and a discharge ready date as well. And you can see how that updates, and it updates the discharge status tab up there. Going back to the patient synopsis main view, you can see here that we've got 3 panels: care alerts, indicators and service requests. So we'll start off with indicators. Indicators can be added to by clicking on this green button up here. The indicators are split out into different areas, but a trust can configure what section indicators are shown in, as well as to, within some limitations, what icon is used. The icons can be coloured any colour that the trust wishes to colour the indicators. By default they will be black. An indicator can also be configured to either show or be hidden on a locked patient bed card. So when a user is not logged into the system, all of the patient details are removed, but any of these indicators which are of a sensitive nature can also be hidden. We can multi-select these indicators simply by selecting them and clicking save, and you'll see that they're added into the indicator panel, added into the flow timeline on the right, and when the patient bed card is closed, they're added to the patient bed card. In a similar vein, you can also remove these indicators, and that is also audited in the top right hand corner here. This section here, service requests, if we go and add in a service request, we can also, in a similar way to how we've just added the indicators, add in other service requests. Service requests don't integrate with Rio referrals, although they are of a similar nature, but are primarily used for recording allied healthcare professional referrals rather than internal referrals used in Rio between services and between inpatient and outpatient. So I've just added a number of service requests there, and I'm going to schedule the social services service request. So if I click on the calendar symbol and select today's date, select a suitable time and click on save, I have the option to confirm that appointment date and time. Again, it's not creating any appointments in Rio, but if I save that, it'll then move to a scheduled. So that social services is now took on a second part of a triangle, making like the 3 stages of a service request, which is requested, scheduled and completed. If I choose to complete that, I can also apply an actual appointment date and time, or just say save, and it will take the original scheduled date and time. You can now see that the triangle, we have a full triangle here, and all of this obviously could be done by different people, and you're to see the time and the person who has completed that stage. This is then reflected on the bed card with that 3-stage triangle in full and the other partial triangles shown as the stages of the service requests. We also have a care alerts column, which I've just applied a ready for discharge, discharge ready date, and the patient is now medically fit. But basically a care alert is where a criteria is met in Rio, and it will show a symbol. So for example, my requires post-admission review, if I remove that, the patient then becomes a new patient again. So this is typically every patient that is admitted onto the ward will be a new patient until the PAR 72 indicator has been added, and this can be for any number of conditions that are met in Rio, including conditions met on an assessment form such as falls risk or any other form, or it could be based on an alert, it could be based on any number of criteria that has been met. So moving on then, we've looked at service requests and we've completed and scheduled a couple of things. We've looked at discharge, and we can change the discharge status. If we go and add in a delay, that will be synchronized with Rio. If we go and to the admission tab, we can look at the admission details. In a further release of Flow, we're going to have the ability to admit, transfer and discharge. So those tabs will be interactive to allow admission, transfers and discharge details to be added from the whiteboard. We can change the leave or add a leave, sorry. So if I, for example, selected home leave, I could put in a planned leave time. I could also put in the actual date and time. If I want to describe what the patient was wearing at the time of leaving, I could add that on the whiteboard. So we also have a little discharge box down here. If I click on the wording there, a little list pops up. So this can be show discharges within a set time period. That could be set typically between 24 and 72 hours, but it's actually configurable in Rio to any number of hours based on a system constant. Next to that, we see a little window symbol. If we click on that, that also becomes a panel, which is shown up at the top here, if it's easier to read them in that way. So if I minimize that box, I can actually minimize any of these other boxes as well, but as soon as the board refreshes or the person logged in logs out, then it will reset to this standard screen layout each time. Along the left hand side here, you see a lock symbol, which is currently unlocked, and some KPI tiles. So the KPI tiles are basically queries that is run against details of the ward and shows for example, empty wards, patients that are on the ward. It could show patients that are on leave. It could show failed to return. In this case, we're showing the closed beds on the ward, we're showing the empty beds, and we're showing the total number of beds that are available on the ward. So the lock symbol up at the top left hand corner, when that is clicked, it will go to a lock mode. Within the lock mode, it will restrict what you can see in terms of the name and the demographic details. This is quite configurable, so we can show it so it shows no patient data, as in completely blank name and title, a blank date of birth, blank NHS number, blank gender. Or we can partially obscure the name so you see the first initials and everything else is obfuscated out using asterisks. So you would just see the first initial followed by stars. The date of birth would be starred out, the NHS number would be starred out. Or we can show just the initials on their own without any sort of indication of how long the name is. So that's the end of this presentation. If you'd like any more details, please contact your account manager or the Flow sales team. Thank you very much.